In this video, I'm going to cover 5 different photo retouching methods for portraits. The first one will be in Lightroom, and then the following 4 will be in Photoshop. So no matter which program you prefer, there should be a method that works for you. Let's get right into it. And thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. This first method is really nice because it's simple, you can stay in Lightroom, and it's just for some minor retouching. The first thing I'll do is remove more obvious blemishes with the spot removal tool. Make sure it's set to heal with a little bit of feather. Just click on a blemish and Lightroom will automatically find another spot to sample from. Sometimes it gets a little goofy and picks a crazy sample area, so you can always just drag that sample circle to another spot. So we can just clean up the most obvious problem areas and move on. Next, I'm going to grab an adjustment brush, lower the texture to -100, and start painting over her face, but avoiding the areas that I want to keep detailed, like her eyes, lips, and hair. Now obviously -100 is way too much, but allows us to see what we're doing. You can also press O on the keyboard to check your mask. I'm going to bring the texture slider back up. I think around -20 looks good. Let's take a look at the before and after. So that's a quick and easy way to do some minor retouching in Lightroom, but let's get a little more in depth. So let's head into Photoshop. I'm going to start completely over with this photo. I've just done some color grading with our MS Portrait preset, so now we'll just do some touch-ups. I always like to start by duplicating my image, so I select in the Layers panel and I press Command or Ctrl J. This way I have my original here in case I don't like any edits I make. Once again, the first thing I always look to tackle are the more obvious blemishes. There's a ton of ways to fix them in Photoshop, but for now, let's use the Patch tool. Over in your tools, click and hold on the spot healing brush, and then select the Patch tool. Make sure Patch is set to normal, Source is highlighted, and your diffusion is set to 5. The Patch tool can repair a selection in your image by sampling from another part of your image and blending that sampled area in. To see how well it can work, I'm going to open this photo and then draw around the Apple logo on my laptop with the Patch tool, and then click and drag from inside the selection area to an area outside the selection that we want to sample from. It does a really nice job of blending in to match the lighting and texture. So back to our other photo, let's try the Patch tool out on our model's face. I'll just draw a circle around a blemish and then click and drag from inside the selection area to an area I want to sample from. Voila. So I'm going to keep using the Patch tool, doing a little at a time. Now just a note on my retouching guidelines, I'm generally just looking to remove temporary blemishes. I don't want to remove characteristics that are a part of a person's face, like a birthmark or a mole. Also, be careful not to zoom in too far when you retouch, because even though you think you may be doing improvements, when you zoom out, it could just look way off. So if you do need to zoom in for some detail work, make sure you're often zooming back out just to double check your work. Okay, let's take a look at the before and after with the Patch tool. Much better and super simple to do. Let's move on to another tool. For this method, I'm going to retouch a photo of myself that I took for a thumbnail for my other YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to if you haven't already. And I've already used the Patch tool to clean it up a little bit, so now I'm going to create a new layer and rename it Clone Stamp. I'll then select the Clone Stamp tool. I want the flow to be around the 20% range, so it won't be too extreme, but just to help de-emphasize certain areas. Also make sure sample is set to current and below. Now if we take a look at the wrinkles by my eye, I think that one there is from when I lost $20,000 in the stock market. I can press Option or Alt on my keyboard in an area close by that doesn't have a wrinkle to select that as my source, and then I can just paint over that wrinkle. I don't really want to remove the wrinkles completely because, well, I'm just getting old and I should just start accepting it. But now I can just go through touching up any other areas that might need it. And then if I want, I can lower the opacity on this layer to blend it back in with the original. Okay, now let's take a look at another method to even out the skin tone. This is kind of a simplified dodge and burn technique, which dodge and burn is generally used to even out the transition between the shadows and highlights of your image. So I'm gonna create 2 new layers. One I'll name lighten and one darken. I'll then change the darken blend mode to darken and the lighten to, you guessed it, lighten. Now I'll be using the clone stamp again with a flow in the 10 to 20% range. What I want to do is look for darker areas that have bright highlights that are distracting. Like over here we have this shiny spot on her nose that I want to remove. I'll make sure my darken layer is selected and then grab a sample over here and then paint over the brighter spot. Then I'll do the same thing for the lighten layer. I'll look in the lighter areas for darker spots and then sample and paint over them. Like over here under the eye, it's a little darker and we can tone that down a bit. So since we are using the lighten and darken blending modes, this restricts the information that gets painted on to only affect the lighter areas on one and the darker areas on the other. You can also do some adjustments over on our male model's face as well. Okay, let's take a look at the before and after. So simple and effective. Okay, ready? Now.
Squarespace! All right, my first time making a website. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited. Let's do this. I'm already done making my website. Are you surprised? I am.
I'm really impressed with Squarespace's blogging tools. Yay.
Whoa, they've got email campaigns? I'm totally gonna send one.
That was totally worth it.
Look at all this traffic overview. It's all right here. A year ago, I didn't think I could have my own beautiful website, but Squarespace made it so easy. Thank you.
This year, give yourself the gift of your own beautiful website with Squarespace and save 10% when you use the code MangoStreet at checkout. Head to the link in our description to get started. Okay, the last technique we'll cover is frequency separation, which if you've never done it before, you basically take your image and you split it into 2 layers. One layer contains the texture and detail, and then the other contains the skin tone. We also want to do this step after we've removed blemishes, so I'm going to press Command-Option-Shift-E to make a new layer with all of my previous adjustments. I'll then duplicate this layer. The top one will be the texture and the lower one will be the color. I'll shut off the top layer for now and select my color layer. So in order to remove the texture from the color layer, let's go to Filter, Gaussian Blur. Your blur amount will depend on the resolution of your image and the type of portrait, but I want to increase the radius until the face has smoothed out and the details are pretty much gone. I think a radius of around 7 works well here. I'll click OK. Now let's set up our details layer. With it selected, I'll go to Image, Apply Image. Since this layer currently contains all of the information in our image because it's just a duplicate, we need to remove the color tone so it just has the texture and details remaining. So under Layer, I'll select Color. Under Blending, I'll choose Subtract. Now for Scale, let's set that to 2 so it subtracts as much as possible. 2 is the highest number. So then we'll set the offset to 128, which makes the background color 50% gray. And the reason we're doing this is because we can then use a blending mode that makes 50% gray invisible and just leaves us with the details. So let's hit OK. And for our blending mode, we'll select Linear Light. And you'll notice that it made the gray invisible, and now we're back to where we started, except Now we have our color on this layer and our texture on this layer. So let's put these layers in a folder, select them and hit Command G. There's now a lot of things you can do with this information split onto 2 layers. You generally want to smooth out the colors of the skin tone, and there are several ways you can do that. I'll show you 2. First, I'm going to turn off my texture layer so that I can show you how the other layer is being affected. And so for this method, you can use the lasso tool with a little bit of a feather. You can make a selection, then press Q to see how your feather is looking, and then you can make any adjustments that you need to, and just press Q again. Then we can go to Filter and use the same Gaussian blur settings we did earlier. We can then repeat this process, creating a selection on one part of the face, blurring it, and then moving on to the next part. The Gaussian blur helps blend the colors of the face to create a smoother look. Let's turn on the texture layer and we can see the before and after. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and undo all of that and show you another method using the mixer brush. Click and hold on the brush tool and then select Mixer Brush. Now let's adjust the settings at the top. If you have a color swatch selected, click this button so you won't add any color in. For wetness, I want something under 5% so it doesn't smear the colors too much. And then for flow, I want that around 10%. Now we can start painting with the brush to blend the colors. Let's turn on the texture layer. Wow, look at the before and now the after. You can see what a huge difference this makes. And we still retain the texture of the skin so it doesn't look too overdone. Once we're happy with the skin tone, we can make any last touch-ups to the texture layer. So here I'll select the texture layer and use the healing brush tool. You could also use clone stamp or patch tool, whatever you prefer. Option or Alt click on my sample area and then paint over the area I want to touch up. All right, now if we feel like we may have overdone any of the frequency separation, we can always just lower the opacity of the entire group, just like so, until we get it where we want it. Let's take a look at the before and after. So usually you'll use a combination of these methods when you're retouching. It all depends on the photo, maybe the client, what you're really going for. But the more tools that you have in your toolbox, the better off you'll be and the easier your job will be.
You know what? Keep this. You earned it.
Well, that's it for this one. If you want to see us do more Photoshop tutorials, leave us a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and do us a favor and hit that thumbs up button on this video. It really helps us out. See you guys next time.